we go to a break and he says to me off air, he goes, you really love this positive thinking affirmation stuff. I said, oh my God, I do, Maharishi. I mean, it's amazing. And he said, what's your favorite affirmation? And I go, I've been saying it for 17 years. I say it every morning when I get up. I love it. He goes, share it. I am David Essel, a child of God, happy, healthy, and sober today. And he smiled and he nodded his head and he said, is all of that true? And I lied. And I said, yes. He said, well, then keep saying it. But he goes, let me just give you one thought. If you're going to say affirmations that are not in your reality, you are now out of integrity because it's a lie. Rakshana, that one interaction radically changed me because it made sense. I had been saying for 17 years I was sober and I was never sober. I was using affirmations that make myself feel better. I mean, heartmath.org has done studies on affirmations. And when they look at the brain, when you say an affirmation with emotion, it lights up. There's a cascade of chemicals, dopamine, GABA, serotonin, released into the brain that makes you feel awesome. So for 17 years, I'm lying to myself, but feeling good for 45 seconds every day.
Wow.
I'm rocking that affirmation and I'm feeling great. And every night at 8 o'clock, I started drinking again. So I get off the air with him and I go along with my life. 3 weeks later, I'm speaking in Orlando, Florida, and I'm at a big conference. I get off stage. There's a huge line of people. I finally get to this tiny little lady at the end and I go, I am so sorry it's taking me so long to get here. What can I answer for you? She said, listen, I just flew in. I've only got 20 minutes now left to interview you. Let's go get coffee, and I got to fly right back. I said, what magazine are you with? She said, I'm not. I said, well, why are you here? She said, Maharishi sent me. I go, you're kidding me. She goes, no. She goes, he called me up. He knew you were going to be in Orlando, and he said, fly down there and ask him one question. So we sat down with coffee. I said, what's the question? She goes, what do you remember from the interview? And Rakshana, here's the weirdest thing in the world. I had interviewed Wayne Dyer billions of times and Deepak billions of times and Susie Orman and all these other names in the industry. And if you would have said to me 3 weeks, 6 months, 2 years later, hey, what was that interview you did with Wayne Dyer or Deepak? And I'd say, oh, it was about there's a spiritual solution for every problem. And I would be able to say, and this is what we talked about. But I drew a blank. And his assistant, who had been with him for 36 of his 40 years, the Beatles is what made TM famous. He got the Beatles hooked on transcendental meditation in 1960. They freaked out. I mean, they stopped drugs. They stopped doing all this stuff when they found the power of TM. So she had been with them throughout this whole thing. And I said, I don't remember a thing. She goes, David, you must remember something. And this is where it gets interesting, more interesting, Rakshana. I said, the only thing I can remember is that he had so much joy. And she said, David, what I'm going to tell you next, you're not going to want to hear. But at some point in the future, it'll make total sense. The reason you only remember his joy is because you don't have any.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I said, what are you talking about? And she said, listen, it happens to all of us. I've been with him for 36 years. We will be sitting in a room. He'll be lecturing. 6 of us will walk out and each of us will remember something totally different that he talked about that was only relevant to us. And I looked at her and I said, well, that might work for you guys, but it doesn't work for me. And I went into defense, Rakshana, I said, no, you don't understand. I live on the beach. I drive this. I have this show. I write books, blah, blah, blah. And she said, no, listen, I understand. This is a hard reality to accept. I said, well, it's not my reality, so I can't accept it. And she said, listen, I got to go. I said, yeah, it's a good time to end the interview. And I said, look tell Maharishi I love him. I go, I'm not sure about what you're doing here, but tell him I love him, And so she went away. 2 weeks later, 1996, 2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, I came out of another 4-day binge, cocaine and alcohol. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I really got it. And I said, you have no joy. if you have an addiction to food, nicotine, alcohol, drugs, television, if you have a righteousness addiction, if you have whatever your addiction is, there is not joy to be found mixed with addiction. And it really changed me. And then I started looking at the affirmation and I said, I've been lying to myself for 17 years. I've been using all of this stuff and nothing has changed. I've been saying I'm sober for 17 years and I'm still an alcoholic. And that changed my, and then what I had to do is, then I had to go, what is the problem? Is it alcohol? And the issue is no, alcohol isn't the problem. Food isn't the problem. Nicotine isn't the problem. The problem is that we want to avoid reality. The problem is we have not learned powerful coping, healthy coping skills to deal with sadness, insecurity, arrogance, resentment, rage, anger, boredom, excitement. Like we use birthday cakes because sugar adds energy, and that actually, in an adult, it numbs the brain, but to make the celebration higher. We use alcohol to make the night even more exciting, or to kill boredom, or to kill anger, or whatever. But right. We're not dealing with reality. And so this is where the subconscious mind comes into play. The conscious mind is saying, I am sober. The subconscious mind is saying, until 8 o'clock tonight, and then we'll have another drink, David. And then I get it up again the next day. The conscious mind says, some people love to use those statements, I earn $1 million a year, when they're earning 50,000. Now, it makes you feel better in the moment, but it's a complete lie. You're way out of integrity. And that doesn't make sense. And so you say, if these affirmations worked, if the secret worked and all this kind of stuff, you and I wouldn't be talking, Rakshana. There would never be another book since The Law of Attraction or The Secret ever written if that stuff was viable. It's not. 30 years on the air and interviewing all these experts, as well as athletes and actresses and actors, no one has ever told me that they achieved massive success in life via their thoughts. Keith Mitchell is a great friend of mine, former middle linebacker with the New Orleans Saints, all-pro football player, retired now. And I said to him, I had him on the show one time, and I said, hey, did you create that body and the all-pro success celebration with your thoughts? Or Rich Gaspari, one of the best bodybuilders ever. I said, Rich, did you do that with your mind? Did you create that body? A doctor. I asked a neurosurgeon, did you become a doctor via your affirmations and vision board? These people are laughing hysterically, Rakshana. and I say, well, there's people out there trying to teach us that that's all you need to do. So what we found was this, is that the patterns that are keeping us in dysfunction, if you have repeated relationships that suck, if you struggle with food or alcohol, if you struggle with nicotine or television, whatever the addiction is, it's a pattern set into the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is running the show. If you get up every day at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, you've trained the subconscious to accept that as a healthy pattern, and it will fight like hell once you've set that pattern to keep it going. But if you have a negative pattern that you keep hitting the snooze button, or when you come home from work, you immediately grab a drink, or whatever the pattern you feed it, the subconscious is just a tape recorder. Whatever you feed it, it feeds right back to you. So it doesn't have the ability to differentiate between your habits are good or bad. All it says is, oh, it's 8 o'clock. David would like a drink. Let's remind him. And that's how we keep these habits that are hellacious for 20, 30, 40, 60, 70 years. If you take the time and you really want to know the secret to success, it's getting into the subconscious and turning the subconscious around so that it matches your conscious mind. So that when you say an affirmation that I am fit and I am working towards a size 8 from a size 16, now that's an affirmation that makes sense. We have to, and then you have to follow it with action. On average, if you have a long-term belief held in the subconscious about, the need to drink or your aversion to exercise or whatever the issue is, it can take up to a year of repeating the opposite pattern that you've been in for the subconscious to totally turn around. I've been sober for a long time. In my years of being sober, I have gone through deaths of people close to me. I went bankrupt 2008, 2009, when the economic crash. I lost all my houses in 2008, 2009. I've lost dogs. I've lost relationships. Not at one time have I ever thought about having a drink. Up until my change, every day there was a reason to drink. I've gone through hell and it's never even popped up. And that's proof that the change has happened at the subconscious level. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does make sense to me in the sense of, so I can relate it to being driven. You've made a choice and you're going to work at it and execute it. But then let's say you slip up. You won't reprimand yourself. You won't beat yourself up about it. All right, I slipped up. Let's continue. Let's move forward. Why did I slip up? Let's find out why. But then let's keep going forward to what I want, what I want my result to be, and not what I think it should be.
Mm-hmm. So if you take that model that you just said, and you say, okay, I want a size fill in the blank body, or I want a certain income, or I want a whatever. The very first thing that we say in all of our books is make sure it's realistic. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're earning $50,000 a year, drop the nonsense about I am earning $1 million a year. By the way, if you earned $1 million a year, that's $82,000 a month. There aren't too many people in this world that have the gifts, the talent, the determination, and the persistence to earn $82,000 a month. That's just a fact. Right. Less than 2% of the U.S. population earns $1 million a month. Okay, so don't be throwing out crap like that. Mm-hmm. That's irrational. Now, if you're earning $50,000 a year and you're my client, we're going to go for 75. That's it. When you max at 75, we're going for 100. Mm-hmm. When you get 100, we're going for 150. And when you look at making those kind of incremental changes, it's realistic, it's achievable, and you're going to know within 3 to 6 months if the path you're on is correct. But if you say to yourself, I'm earning $1 million a year, you know, it could be 20 years before you earn that $1 million. People have done it. You know, one of the most famous people that did it was Colonel Sanders. Mm. You know, he never made hardly any money at all until he was 68. He became a millionaire at 68. He became a billionaire at 80. But there was a guy that had such faith in his product that he kept working and working and working until he cracked the case and made the money. Most of us don't have that amount of determination. You know, in my life, I wrote books for 20 years and hardly sold any, but I kept writing books. On the 21st year, I think it was I have 11 books out. It must have been like our 8th book. It went number 1. 9 went number 1. 10 went number 1. 11 went number 1. But for the first 20 years, we weren't moving any mountains at all, but we kept working it. And then it paid off. You know, a friend of mine that I write about in the book, our book Focus, Slay Your Goals, Evelyn Keeling was 240 pounds overweight. She had done all the diets, the fad diets, but just think about this. In your 40s, being 240 pounds overweight, she made a decision. The decision was huge. The first decision was to throw all the crap in her house out, all the garbage food, all the unhealthy food. Now, here's the second thing, and this is a toughie. At 240 pounds overweight, she was wheeled into a gym, a health club, stood up on the treadmill to walk for a couple minutes, and then wheeled out. Do you know the humility it takes? I mean, now, this is work. The end result was that she changed her subconscious mind. She has no desire at all for all the crap she used to eat. Her only desire now is to eat clean and healthy and to be in the gym. And here's a beautiful ending of her story. A number of years after she had lost the weight and she got really serious about exercise, now she's in her 50s, Rakshana. She walked on stage in Las Vegas in front of 15,000 screaming fans in a bikini and heels. On one side of the stage was a master photo of her 240 pounds overweight in a wheelchair. And here she is rocking it as a freaking bodybuilder. These are stories I'm telling you are potentially available for anyone. But here's the big difference. 90% of us, Rakshana, will not ever commit to the work necessary to create deep love, to create the body we want, the money we want, to create the love with life that we want, to create the energy we want. Most of us